Hello, welcome back to my channel. So let's talk about this last episode of Seeking Sister Wife. So it started off with the Merrifields. They picked up Leah, their potential sister wife, from the airport in LA, and they brought her back to this Airbnb to call Roberta. And Roberta has been cold and distant with Leah because she hasn't been on board with the whole idea of the Merrifields seeking another sister wife. And Leah said that Roberta hasn't been the friendliest to her. She said every time she reaches out to Roberta, trying to be nice and friendly and get to know her, she feels like she's carrying the whole conversation. And Roberta's short and sweet with her responses, and they're like dead end responses where Roberta doesn't seem like she's trying to put any effort into getting to know Leah or ask about her son. So Roberta has been showing zero interest in trying to get to know Leah, and it makes Leah feel weird and awkward and feel some type of way, and she isn't sure if it's just because of the language barrier or if it's because Roberta genuinely isn't interested in getting to know her. And that's another thing I noticed. Like, we know Roberta gets along with Garrick, but I've never seen Roberta and Danielle texting or talking on the phone one-on-one, trying to get to know each other better and work on their relationship as potential sister wives. And that's an important aspect to making this whole thing work. Like, that should be a major red flag if the sister wife is only showing interest in getting to know the man. And then they all call Roberta, and there was definitely a language barrier. Roberta couldn't understand anything, so Garrick had to turn on his translator app, and Danielle said, well, we're all excited to get to know each other on this trip. And you could just tell by the way that Roberta said, yeah, she sounded unsure and like she wasn't feeling it, like she wasn't down at all for this. So then Danielle told Roberta she wishes she was here with all them, and Roberta just lost it. She started crying, which in turn made Garrick start breaking down crying. And we ain't ever seen Garrick cry at all, not even after him and Danielle got divorced and Danielle was breaking down. And Garrick says he hasn't seen Roberta on camera on a video call in at least a few months, so it's really emotional for Garrick. He said where she lives, her internet service isn't the greatest, so the communication has been super spotty. And then Leah, this just concerned her even more. She's scared that there may be issues in the future with Roberta with jealousy because she's already starting to show those signs. And Leah told Danielle that she felt like Roberta was being rude because she wasn't trying to get to know Leah, put any effort in. And while Leah's telling Danielle all this, Danielle was like acting shocked. But you could kind of tell, like, deep down, like, Danielle's like, oh, now Leah's understanding what I've been going through this whole time. And now Roberta's feeling what Danielle's been feeling this whole time. The tables have turned. And Leah's curious if Roberta's going to affect her and Garrick's relationship. And Garrick and her are going to have to slow down. And Danielle said she has questioned if it was even the best time to start looking for a third wife. And now Danielle feels guilty because Roberta is feeling the other end of the stick that Danielle has been feeling for the longest. But I don't think Danielle should feel guilty. I'm going to make my predictions right now and say I don't think that this whole bringing Leah into the picture thing is going to work. You can really tell that Garrick really cares about Roberta's feelings and she's not on board whatsoever. And I think that's really going to affect this relationship with Leah. And it just seems like Garrick really isn't feeling Leah like we saw him feel Roberta. I know they just met each other in person, but he hasn't really been affectionate with her. And half the time when she talks, he doesn't even look her in the eyes. He's looking at Danielle, looking at the ground the whole time. So you can just tell his heart isn't in the same place as it is with Roberta. Shoot, I don't even think his heart's in the same place with Danielle as it is with Roberta. Because like I kind of said earlier, he started breaking down. He couldn't pull himself together while Roberta's sitting there crying. But we've seen Danielle break down time and time again. Even them get divorced. He didn't even flinch or shed any kind of tear or show any kind of emotion. So you can see who's his favorite, obviously. And then we finally got introduced to the Epps family, which consists of Taryn, Marcus, and India. And they've been living the polygamous lifestyle for over 2 years now, and they said it's all peaches and cream. So Marcus met Taryn when they're both in college. He was a freshman and she was a junior, and he was banging one of her friends and saw a picture of Taryn one day in her friend's room, and he said When he wants something, he goes after it. Next thing you know, months later, Marcus took Taryn's virginity. And Marcus is an elected official in Ohio, and he said it has affected his profession quite a bit, with people looking down on him in the community and thinking he's some weirdo. But Marcus is dedicated and in love with this polygamous lifestyle. So Taryn and Marcus, they're married for over 11 years. And then Marcus started going out with other women, and they didn't have an open relationship or a conversation about any of this. So Taryn got upset and moved out with their daughter, because here's Marcus out here cheating with 5 to 10 different women, and she was trying to figure out if she could forgive Marcus. You know, she lost her virginity to Marcus, so she was really attached to him, and they really had a thing. And she feels like Marcus took advantage of the fact she was so cool and understanding. And while she was moved out, Marcus met, instead of Marcus trying to work on his relationship with Taryn, he's still out here banging other women, and he ended up meeting India. India was out having drinks with her friends, and she met Marcus, and India's been in the picture ever since. And Taryn, she was gone for over a year, and then her and Marcus started talking about trying to get back together and move forward. And meanwhile, Marcus is over here now full-blown engaged to India. So Taryn moved back in, and at first she was like, F this about Marcus seeing India. But she said after a month of getting to know India, she realized she really liked India, and they got along great. So Marcus was like, hey, let's all be polygamous together. And Taryn was down. She was on board. She pretty much realized at that point the only way she was going to be able to be with Marcus is to live this polygamous lifestyle. But India really wasn't feeling this, but she said after time, when she got to know Taryn more, she realized the dynamic ended up working out really good for her. So Marcus, he has a 16-year-old son, and him and Taryn have a daughter together. So the Epps family, they have a set schedule. They rotate, they alternate nights with each other. So Marcus spends one night with India and the next with Taryn. And then Marcus decided it's time for him to start courting Bina. They met over 12, 13 years ago, and she's a hairstylist that runs her own salon, and she has a 5-year-old son, and the whole family's on board with this idea. But Bina isn't the only woman that Marcus is courting. He wants to keep his options open, so he's going to try to go out and get to know multiple different women and find out which one or ones may potentially fit into the family. And of course, Taryn, she is really pushing that it's very important that whoever comes into the picture not only gets along with her, but India as well, because she doesn't want to ruin what they've already built with Marcus. And that's a good point. You don't want someone to come in and shake up and ruin the whole dynamic. And then we have the Davises. So we got Nick, who he doesn't work. He's taken care of by 2 beautiful ladies and has sex whenever he feels like it. And they sit there and talk about how, oh, he sits at home and he reads all day, and when we come home, we get to learn new things. And it's like, man, you got a grown man to be a stay-at-home reader and thinker, while you 2 dummies are working, cooking, cleaning, and pleasing him sexually. Like, it'd be one thing, like, if you guys are going to work and he's actually taking care of the house during the day. But at the end of the day, like what I saw from the show, when they come home, they're doing all the cooking and cleaning, what it appears like, while he's just sitting around reading books and shit. And Nick tries really hard to sound really intellectual, when in reality, he's just a little horn dog. And Nick, he's smart. The smartest thing he did was have the women marry each other. That way he isn't liable for anything. So Nick decides to go out on a date with Danielle, and he cuts right to the chase and asks her, where does she think this relationship is going? And Danielle says she does see herself committing to this relationship for life. And Danielle's young. She's only 22, and she has no idea that this is the direction that she'd be at this age. She thought she was going to have roommates, be in college, and she has fears about insecurities and jealousness that may come from April and Jennifer after they bring Danielle into the picture. So Nick takes her to like this cheeseburger bar. They eat a cheeseburger, have some french fries, and that's all it takes to have Danielle agree to go back home with Nick because Nick wants to take Danielle to Pound Town in the bedroom. And this is a new place they've yet to go, and Nick is beyond excited, and even Danielle said she's DTF. So they come back to the house, and Jennifer and April are waiting on them, and they're super welcoming to Danielle. It seems like they really get along really good. And Nick didn't waste no time to take Danielle to the bedroom. And April and Jennifer, they're both on board, and they're super excited for the both of them. They said they were going to sleep in the guest room for the night so Nick and Danielle could have their private time. And they said first thing in the morning they want all the details and the scoop. And then we have the Foleys, which consist of Brenda and Steve. They're in the process of building a nice big house after they relocated to another state during the pandemic. And they're building a bigger house to help accommodate their potentially growing polygamous family. And if you guys saw my last video talking about the first episode of Seeking Sister Wife, I looked into Steve's education and his work history, and he's a really smart dude. He has a lot of education behind him, and he makes really good money at his job. So they're courting this girl named April. So she's 21 years old, half of Steve's age, and they met April over 5 months ago, and they've been dating exclusively for over 3 months now. And Brenda, she wants a sisterhood with April, a best friend that she can always count on, and she wants April and her to have just as close as a relationship as Steve and her has, minus the intimacy. And Brenda's also worried about how April may feel coming into all this and wants to make sure she's as comfortable as possible, because Brenda was once in April's role, because when she first met Steve, he was already married to someone else, and she said it was hard to come in as a new person to an already established couple. And I think that's a very good point. Like, I don't know if any of you guys have seen Love Off the Grid. It's a Discovery Plus show, but it's about someone who lives off the grid, and they bring a city folk that they're dating to move in with them. It's a really good show. Check it out if you haven't already. But you get to watch them get accustomed to their lifestyle, and there's this one couple on there, and they were building this house, and they said they wanted a big playboy polygamous mansion with hella wives. But the main girl, I can't remember her name, she said no matter what, she was the one who called the shots, and she'll always be the queen and have the power. So they're trying to get all these other girlfriends, but she wants to be the main one in charge, and everyone has to be submissive to her. And of course, the one girl they tried to see didn't work out. But I was just thinking in my head the whole time, this sounds like this is definitely going to be something hard to maintain long term, because people want to be equals coming into a relationship. They don't want to be under you where you're acting more superior to them or don't have a say. So I thought that was very considerate and thoughtful of Brenda to really consider how April will feel coming into an already established relationship and making sure it's just a smooth sailing and as comfortable as possible. So Steve, April, and Brenda, they all went out to a winery to do a wine tasting. And every time Steve and Brenda attempt to court a new person, they always do the first few dates with Brenda and Steve together with the other person to make sure they all work on building that connection and making sure that person can fit into an existing relationship. And I really think that's a really great idea, because if, like, say Steve's courting someone, he goes out and he goes on a first few dates with this girl, well, him and that girl already have a few steps ahead compared to Brenda getting to know this girl. So by the time that he's gonna bring that other girl into the mix, then Brenda's gonna feel like she's not on the same page as them. So I think that's a really great idea for both of them to go on the dates together at first. So they all seem like they have a pretty good bond together, and they all seem to get along pretty well. Steve and April have already been intimate, and Steve said at this point he is in love with April. But as soon as he said that, Brenda, like, her eyebrows started twitching, and she made a face, and she said it is really hard for her to hear that, because even though she does want this whole polygamous lifestyle, she came in to the relationship with Steve when Steve had already had an established wife, and his wife was not feeling it, and that ended up causing his wife to leave the marriage and that she had been in for years because of Brenda. And now Brenda is getting a taste of that medicine. And she says she's worried because she doesn't want to feel like it's a competition. Sometimes she's scared that what if Steve may love April more than me, or what if one day he just decides he doesn't love me anymore and moves on. So she's really battling with those fears in her head. But that's it for this video, guys. Sorry, this video is a lot longer than my typical videos. I typically like to make my videos like short and sweet, get right to the point, but I just had a lot to say about these couples, and we have a lot of new couples on this season that we got to get to know. But let me know your thoughts on this episode and what you think about all these couples so far in the comments below. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.